All right, we're here today with Taylor Barnebey, Vice President of Marketing and Brand Advertising at Total Wine and More. Taylor, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for hosting.
Terrific. We're looking forward to your session at eBev as well. Another thank you on that. Really excited coming up at the end of May.
Here.
So let's start with the big picture. The alcohol industry has been facing a decline, particularly among the younger demographic. What would you say are some of the core factors that, from your perspective, are driving this?
Yeah, I think the headlines are, probably somewhat well publicized. There's definitely a lot of information out there in today's world around the health effectiveness of beverage alcohol, and that's a shift, right? If you look back 10 years, potentially even 5 years, the general health advisories were different. And without getting into the validity or not validity of those advisories, I think we have to acknowledge very clearly that the information that's coming from the different health organizations out there is very different than it was certainly 10 years ago, and probably even as early as 5 years ago. So that's an impact, right? We also know that there is our younger generations definitely are connected more to health than previous generations. I think there's a higher focus on that. Living a healthy lifestyle is certainly a higher focus than it was, and so you can easily tie those two together. And I think those are probably the biggest, right? It's hard to say that there's another bigger factor than that. There's also some generations also shift, right? And we've seen this just historically. Americans don't want to do what their parents did, right? And there's a piece of that puzzle in the beverage alcohol space as well. As a sub bullet under the big headline of the connection to health, right? And so, I think if you put those two together, you can very easily and very quickly start to unpack kind of where we are and why we're here.
Definitely. I think that makes a lot of sense. So then getting to your session at eBev, you're leading a keynote called Better Together. Can you walk us through the inspiration behind this and why you think now is the time for a unified industry message?
Yeah, I think the with demand declining, right, and we have to acknowledge that is going on in our industry. The most powerful thing that we as an entire industry could do to reverse that trend is to have a cohesive message around why wine, why spirits, right? What are the core features and benefits of the products that we sell and market to our customer? And we've seen that work in other categories, other non-alcoholic categories, right? Where there's a core message that consumers can really relate to and really identify with, and it lifts all boats, right? And in today's world, we've gotten to an incredible place with messaging that is very specific to the brands. And we have brands that have done an amazing job of communicating the features and benefits of their brand, finding audiences that they can relate to, and adding value into their customers' lives, right? And all that incredibly strong messaging has this other wave of messaging kind of coming at it that is just pushing it back, right? like the brands are pushing forward with this incredible connective messaging and the benefits that our brands can offer you. And at the same time, there's this other wave crashing down on it. And so what that means is we have to be stronger. We have to be better. As great as we've been, we have to be greater, right? In order to keep our wave bigger than the other wave kind of coming at us. And, in our view, in the seats that we sit in as a retailer, one of the strongest ways to do that is have a cohesive message across the whole industry, right? And across categories, so that the consumer doesn't have to understand the message at a very specific brand level. And if you think about that, we operate in one of the most fractured categories, CPG categories there is, right? And so, as hard as it is for a brand to break through in the categories that we operate in wine and spirits and even beer, think about how hard it is for the messaging of that brand to break through, right? Because it's so fractured. So if you can kind of pull all that together and if there's a chance and an opportunity for us all to work together to create a common theme, a common thread of why wine, why spirits, why beer, the chances and the likelihood that overall demand will actually continue to grow while there's all this other health messaging coming at the category is really, really high. Right. And so here, I think we have to work harder, we have to be sharper, and we have to be more cohesive in our messaging in order to combat that wave of other information that's coming at our customers.
It's a great point. And year after year at our eBev conference, I hear conversation talking about the social occasions coming together, spending time with friends and family, celebrations, watching the big game.
Absolutely.
Meeting your spouse, maybe. All of these things are fluid and fun reasons that the AlcBev industry has been a part of lives. So I think you've got a great point there for sure.
Yeah, said well.
You've spoken about the importance of potential cohesion in industry messaging. What do you think a successful collective campaign would look like in practice, and what outcomes should we be looking for in terms of success?
Yeah, I think the clean example is the Got Milk campaign. And just, an incredibly smart, forward-thinking group of suppliers getting together, funding an initiative around with the headline of driving demand for their product, right? And if you unpack a little bit of why that was so successful, it wasn't about a specific brand, and it wasn't trying to tell a story about a specific brand. It was trying to tell a story about why this category of product, and it incredibly successful, right? And so as we think about, how does that translate to the beverage alcohol business? From my view, there's absolutely an opportunity in the beverage alcohol space to think similarly to how, frankly, milk suppliers were thinking 20, probably 30 years ago now, 35 years ago now, even. And that campaign, I mean, it's memorable. We all know it. We still talk about it. It took, milk products, from somewhat of a consumption beverage to a massive, something that everybody had to have. Like if you weren't drinking milk, what were you doing? And a lot of that was a part of that campaign that they really funded. And you have to acknowledge that that was a bit of a risk, right, from the supplier standpoint. They had to set aside funding for marketing that was going to lift all ships, and it wasn't specific to their owned brands. It was specific to a category, and the retailers were absolutely very happy to play a supporting role in that in an amazing way, and happy to kind of help pull that messaging through to the final point of sale. And it was so successful because the suppliers really figured that out, what demand was for their category of product, and were able to communicate out, really the benefits in 2 words. Absolute genius. Absolute genius.
Couldn't agree more. Well, hopefully we'll get some response at eBev and hear what the industry is thinking. I think that's a great perspective, and getting on to what you were saying about sort of that broad media mix, you have led large omni-channel strategies, TV, digital, in-store, and beyond. Where do you see the most potential for reaching the more mindful or health-conscious consumer?
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't bucket it into one channel or the other. I think I'll come at that. I come at that problem kind of in two buckets. Um, one of which is I don't know that it's to our benefit to try to market our product as health conscious. Um,
Sure.
Now, with that said, there's some fringe on that, right? There's some low alc wines that can kind of fit. Vine has found a little niche in the market as well, and so there is, that's a broad statement, and there's a few exceptions to it for sure. And the simple analogy is no one thinks ice cream is good for you. But we all buy ice cream. Now, I also
Yeah.
want to acknowledge ice cream sales are down a little bit with those Ozempic kind of wave kind of flowing in as well. So, as I say that statement, it's good, it's fair to acknowledge that. But at the same time, I think that the beverage alcohol space, like that's the messaging of this beverage alcohol space. Like we're not saying we're good for you. We're saying we're going to make your life a lot more fun.
Yep.
And in moderation, of course, right? In
Yes.
moderation, we power celebration, we power connection, we power social connection, we power, I think, like you said, we power, meeting new people, we power, meeting your new wife. There's so much there's so much amazing things that our industry powers and supports and helps. We're, a focus group of one, if you will, but in our
Yeah,
little
it's a pretty good focus group, though. You're leading the way, and it's not surprising to hear. I mean, whether it's for their friends who are health conscious, take medicine, or designated driver, whatever it happens to be,
Yeah.
you can see as part of a celebration. Non-alc certainly is a piece, but not usually the whole celebration. So, getting on to the last question here, what would your call to action be for alcohol brands and marketers tuning into this chat here?
Yeah, I think my sincere hope is collaboration. Is working together. I think there's and it doesn't have to be massive. It certainly can be. The scale of which could be small integrations amongst each other. It could be larger integrations. It could start small. It could grow big. All the above would be awesome, right? But the more collaboration across the groups, across the suppliers, the more beneficial I think we are going to find the demand generation that comes from in our category as well. And so, I think the challenge out there is, the days of just demand growth organically happening are gone. Right. And we've got to accept that. We've got to accept that is a new world. And we have got to think about as an entire industry how we're going to operate in that new world of demand growth at best flat.
Yep.
And that's and that's exciting. That shouldn't be scary. It shouldn't be anything. It should be exciting that we have this great new frontier for us to think about how we get to operate differently. And from where we sit, the most important thing we can do to operate differently is really amongst collaboration and how can we all work together. Could just be building brands together. It could be sharing insights together. It could be working on, finding strengths of one supplier, combining them with other suppliers, or vendors or distributors, across the board. But siloing, I don't. It's going to be tough. If we certainly if we keep continuing operating the way we are, it's going to be challenging. But I think it's going to be hard to continue to silo out how we operate.
Agreed. And actually, to your point of collaboration, that was the initial hurdle in launching Beverage Marketing Association. You mean I have to share what I'm doing? We all need to share what we're doing. This builds a stronger industry. We grow together. And so
Absolutely.
I think you're
Absolutely.
right on, Taylor. And thank you for joining us today. Really excited for your presentation in May. And thank you again. Yeah.
Yeah, we look forward to it. Thanks, Seth.